Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Special Olympics Maryland 2020 preseason coaches webinar for snowshoeing. This is Zach Cintron, the sports director here at SOMD. I am also joined tonight by Ron Freeman, who is our venue director. Tonight we are using Zoom for our first time for our meetings. I know we've used GoToWebinar in the past. We're looking to move to Zoom. It's a little bit more comprehensive of a system. And instead of just telling you the usual of raise your hand, ask a question, or type it into the question, I am going to give you a quick heads up on how to do those things on Zoom before we progress here. Everybody should have a little toolbar that pops up that you can use. And so on the toolbar, if you are interested in raising your hand and asking a question live on the webinar, you need to go into Manage Participants. A participants box will pop up. And then under the More section, where the circle with the three dots are, there's a little hand gesture symbol that you can click. When you click that, that'll show up just like raising your hand in GoToWebinar, and then we will open your line for you to speak. If you are interested in asking a question via text and typing it in, you need to go back to your main toolbar, click on the three dots that say More, and click the thing that says Chat. Chat will pop up, and then you can ask your question in there. You can ask it to everyone in the group, or you can send it to me specifically. You can actually even write a note to somebody else as well. But mostly for asking questions, if you want to do it via text, please do it in the Zoom group chat there. Other than that, that is it. Again, we are recording this, so this will be put up on our coaches resource page tomorrow. So if you miss anything or want to double check something, you are more than welcome to go back and check that recording. So for our agenda tonight, again, the preseason ones are a little bit longer. We have so much stuff to cover. We'll try to keep it short here. We'll hit the schedule, snowshoeing venue, the deadlines, certifications for head coaches and other coaches, the events offered in 2020, rules review, our on-snow training dates, other key dates, resources, and then the good old admin stuff, the paperwork, key forms, so on and so forth. And then we will have a question and answer session for everyone. Just so everyone knows, 2021 World Winter Games information for you. We have had our athletes selected that are moving forward. We have 3 athletes. We were given 1 female snowshoeing athlete in the category 2, which is going to be Elena Camacho from Anne Arundel County. If you're interested in going back and seeing the live draw that we did for that, that is up on our website as well. You can find that. The training camp will be out in Colorado in 2020. It's during the 2020 SOMD Winter Games, so these athletes will not be at our Winter Games. And then the dates for the World Winter Games is February 6th through the 12th, 2021. And again, those are our athletes progressing on to Winter World Games. So if you see them, feel free to congratulate them. They are on to a very exciting journey. So the time trials and Winter Games schedules, again, these are tentative. We haven't changed very much on the schedule compared to years in past. So everything should look pretty similar to what you've seen last year. For time trials on that Sunday, again, check-in will be 9 a.m. to noon. We know that a lot of Alpine delegations come in and out throughout the day. If your snowshoeing team comes in with them, we will be around 9 a.m. to noon for check-in. We will do lunch prior, so it'll be 11:45 to 1:30. Lunch will be open in the cafeteria. Then snowshoeing warm-ups will go for, we say 12:15 to 1:45. We may start a little bit earlier for getting everybody ready, getting everybody lined up for staging for time trials. So realistically, we may start staging folks around 1:30. And then the time trials will start at 2 and run till about 4:30. Delegation housing check-in, the location is to be determined. Keys should be ready by 3 o'clock, no later than 6 o'clock. We will offer dinner at Whitetail again, 4:30 to 5:45. And then the game plan is to do the opening ceremony. We're looking to hopefully bump that earlier, so this timeline may run a little bit earlier than that. Your time between snowshoe time trials ending at 4:30 and opening ceremony may be closer together, so there's not as much wait time potentially this year. Next, just again for the time trials competition, this is the layout. We're sticking with that same layout that we did last year. We'll kick off 2 o'clock, 400, 800, 1600, and 4x4 time trials. Again, then we'll move to the shorter distance 25, 50s, and then 100, 200, 4x1 time trials. And again, we condense those time trials into a single time trial for all 6 events for the 400 meter and the upper level, the 800, 1600 meter, and then we condense down to 100 meter for the 100, 200, and 4x1. Again, the tentative schedule for Monday. The game plan is breakfast at the hotels will be offered about 6 a.m. 8 to 9:30 will be delegation registration. Lunch will start at 11 a.m. And again, we start in the afternoon for the Monday portion because we have to move our venue setup from the operations building down to the tubing section. So again, we start a 12:30, 12 o'clock warm-up session with 12:30 to 3:30, 4 o'clock competition time. We would like to do a coaches meeting like we did last year after competition on Monday, just so we can touch base ahead going into Tuesday. And if people want to stick around and hopefully the weather's a little bit better this year, we can finally do our coaches race. I think Ron and I were talking about doing a 100-meter race for coaches this year. Tuesday, you guys know it's a pretty quick in and out day. We'll start at 9:15 for competition. So if you want to come and warm up, please be warming up by 8:45, 9 o'clock. We will start right at 9:15, and then we will close up shop. I think last year we closed up shop closer to 12, but we definitely will close up shop around 1:30 at the latest. And then there will be lunch offered prior to everyone departing. This is the important deadline slide that everybody likes to see. Again, our training registration deadline is 1/9 for this year. And then that last day to get your forms in for athlete medicals, any coaches certifications that may need to be updated is 1/20. And of course, that needs to be, everybody has to have certifications for medicals, concussion for coaches, volunteer background for coaches, protective behaviors for coaches. All that stuff needs to be good through the 25th, which is the last day of winter games. And then our competition registration deadline is 2/13 of 2020 this year. Again, the layout is the same for Whitetail. We're not changing anything up. The food and the lunch court's in the same place. Registration will be inside upstairs like we've done in the past. Control center will be upstairs again. And then volunteer registration will be the down under room like we've done in the past. No setup changes to the main venue. Coaches requirements. Again, most of you have experienced through this year the changes to coaches education. Again, I like to thank Janet Larimore, who's on here, who also made us that very good coaches education and development progression chart. Anyone that is an assistant coach or a sports volunteer or a head coach needs to have, of course, that Class A background completed, have protective behaviors done, and the concussion training. Head coaches are the small difference where they also need to have a CSOA training done and then the sports certification done. Again, like in years past, if you need to update your sports-specific certification for snowshoeing, the 2 on-snow trainings will count towards that. Again, we'll talk about the on-snow trainings this year. They are January 11th and February 8th, I believe, but we'll confirm those dates as we move through our slides here. 2020 events. We have not changed any of our events that we are offering going into 2020. We are offering the same amount of races. Again, a reminder that the 25-meter race and the 50-meter race are considered fundamentals events for athletes that aren't ready to compete at a 100-meter race or higher. But again, we're going to offer the same events as we have in the past, so no major changes there to surprise you. Again, the game plan is snowshoeing athletes can compete up to 3 individual events plus 2 relays, 1 relay each day. Again, athletes in the 25-meter may also race in the 50-meter race. Athletes in the 50-meter race may only enter the 25 or the 100-meter. You can either go up or down. And then athletes in the 50-meter race may only enter the 4x1 relay if entered in the 100-meter as well. Again, coaches should be careful determining events for athletes who will be competing in at least 2 events on a single morning and or afternoon. I don't think there's a scenario based on our order of events in the years past that an athlete wouldn't run at least 2 events on a single morning or afternoon of one of the days. The order of events and the days that the events will fall on will be sent in mid-January. And that will give you a heads up so you know for registering athletes for the competition deadline. Relays are open only to athletes who can race at least 100 meters. In order to participate in a relay, athletes must train for the relay with the other members of his or her team. It's just like track and field. You must compete with the same members of your team. And then the 800-meter unified race, athletes and partners are to run as a tandem pair. I think we've had a couple of those in the past, and you can see the rules below. They have to finish within 5 seconds of one another. Failure to do so will result in a DQ. A combined time of both the athlete and partner will be recorded as the official time. And then the athlete and partner may hold hands. However, pulling, carrying, or any action that is moving the athlete forward against their will or their ability to do so may lead in disqualification as well. Ron, is there anything that you want to add specifically to that unified race?
No, I don't think so, Zach. We've never had any real issues, and it just gives our athletes who have the ability to run the race, but maybe not the confidence to do it, to be able to run with a partner. So if you've not done it before, I think it's a good opportunity for coaches to get your athletes to move into a longer distance with having a unified partner with them. So no, I think you've covered everything.
Cool. All right, some key points for 2020, just so you know. We will keep time trials and winter games in the same weekend. Again, time trials is on Sunday the 23rd, starting at 2 at the operations building for us. And then winter games will be Monday and Tuesday, the 24th and 25th, down at the snow tubing area. Again, if an athlete or partner is interested in competing in the actual winter games on Monday or Tuesday, they have to compete at the time trials on the 23rd in order to be eligible for Monday and Tuesday. Monday, again, I talked about course setup. We do course setup in the morning, and then competition begins in the afternoon. Then Tuesday, competition in the morning starts about 9:15-ish. We want to start as early as possible there and on time as possible, again, so we can get people on the road. There are some people that have a pretty long trip home. 3 individual events plus 1 relay on each day, so 2 relays total. And then awards will be presented in the tubing lodge like they were after each race is concluded. So again, athletes will be taken from the tubing area up to the tubing lodge to be awarded after their races have finished.
Zach?
Yep.
Just go back to the previous slide for a sec. Yep. In terms of starting our competition on Tuesday morning, the only thing that would keep us from starting as early as possible is we have to reline the course based on weather conditions. If we can still see the lines and for our lane lines and our course lines, then we can start it as early as 9 o'clock. However, if there are issues with weather and we have to reline the course, it just takes us a while.
Yep, that's a very good point. The good news is we're going to get good weather this year, Ron. I'm feeling it.
Okay.
So again, here's a map just so you have a visual of the layout for snowshoeing. Up top there, you can see mountain operations where we do time trials. And then you can see that, again, start-finish for our loop that we do down at the tubing area, just to get a visual of how to navigate the snow tubing and mountain operations areas. Ron, do you want to start with equipment here and hit the rules and stuff?
Sure.
Perfect.
Most of the slides everybody's going to see in terms of the competition have not varied at all from the last 4 or 5 years. here's the equipment or the rules and regulations in terms of shoes. What I would ask is if you have an athlete who's really young, maybe his first time, and requires a smaller shoe, let us know at time trials before we start so we can get all those approvals done before we go. There shouldn't be any reason that we have to be looking or measuring snowshoes at the competition. Let's take care of any issues at time trials. Okay, next slide. Okay, again, no changes. Mass start for races longer than 100 meters. Our longer than 100 meter races will go around the loop. We will have a straightaway 100-meter race, and that will all be in lanes. 2 commands start, racers ready and go. We'll have a horn and a flag for hearing impaired athletes and visually impaired athletes as well. Next. Okay, for the competition itself, 2 false starts equals a DQ. This will be part of the competition. We're going to work really hard on the day of time trials to make sure everybody gets a time and is able to compete. So our rules, although the same for time trials as they are for the competition, we do realize that we don't want to be eliminating people from the competition coming all the way out there and wiggle a little bit on the start line at time trials. We want to get everybody to compete on Monday and Tuesday. Okay, next. Because of the nature of our competition area, we are requesting that only officials and competitors on the course. Our 2-minute rule, again, no different than in years past. An athlete must progress at least 20 meters for every 2 minutes. So we've not had an issue. We went back and looked at qualifying and competition times for the last couple of years, and we don't have any athletes who take longer than 2 minutes to run to do a 25-meter race. So that should not be an issue. Every once in a while, there's an athlete who just, for one reason or other, either noise or cold or wind, just stands and does not run or move at all. That will be an issue in time trials. If they can't get across the finish line, they will not be able to compete in that race at the competition. But hopefully, we'll be a little bit more lax on getting some help for those athletes to cross the finish line so they can compete. And again, an athlete may not progress more than 3 meters without both snowshoes on their feet. So at our on snow training, one of the things we'll work on again is working with our athletes to be able to put on their snowshoes if they come off. That will be a skill that will be absolutely required if they come off during the race. Okay, next slide. Okay, for those of you, I didn't look to see who may or may not be new for this year for snowshoeing competition, but up at the operations area where we do the time trials, it's an out and back kind of course, and this is just will give you some advice on how the course looks. There's not much we can do. We can rate it as best as we can, but a little bit past 100 meters, we just by necessity have to have an incline. So this will just give a little bit of help for your athletes in navigating for time trials. And again, probably our on-snow training will be up at the operations building, so your athletes can examine that, get some experience in running up and down hills. We should not have that that type of terrain down at the tubing area. Whitetail does a great job in flattening that out. So it's a lot easier competition down at the tubing area. Okay, next slide. Here's a picture of a track, just to give you a visual of where the, basically of what it will look like. This diagram that we have here in this slide, I want you to not pay very much attention to the verbiage on where the starts are, because this is for a 400-meter track. So it does not apply. There's no diagrams out there that we could have brought in for a 200-meter oval. So basically at 200 meters, 100-meter will be a straightaway, but everything longer than 100 meters, if it's 200, it'll be one time around the track, and in increments of 200 meters for races longer than 200. And for our relays, our exchange zones, we'll talk about relays in a little bit, will be on opposite side of the track in the straightaway. So we'll not be having any exchange zones on a loop. Okay. Again, no difference than in prior years. The completion of the race is when an athlete's torso has crossed the finish line. So we really need to coach our athletes at time trials to run through the finish line and not stop when their snowshoe hits the line, because they've not finished the race. So we'll have lines out there on and some markings out there for on our coaches on snow, our athletes on snow training, so we can practice that as well. And again, your athlete must be wearing both snowshoes when crossing the finish line, and that's both snowshoes on their feet, not both snowshoes or either snowshoe on their hands. Okay, next. Our exchange, our relays, same batons as we use at track and field. A rule, obviously, because of it's being winter games and not summer games, where we prohibit gloves in the track for summer games. We have no issues with that at winter games, obviously. Our exchange zones are 20 meters in length as opposed to the track, where they've been expanded to 30 meters. Our exchange zones will be 20 meters in length on either side of the track. And we'll have those clearly marked for exchanges. And I think last year, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, we did some additional markings either with cones or something to indicate beginning and end of exchange zones, and where a little bit better visual markers of the exchange zones. And one thing I think we talked about a lot in the office, and I'm not sure if we mentioned it yet or if Zach was going to mention it later, one of the things that we want to improve upon this year as opposed to last year is to get more visual, not just for the decoration purposes, but have more things out there to make the track clearer. We were just totally incapable of doing that last year because of the high winds. We couldn't get them in. It would have been a danger to our athletes. So our goal this year is to have not only a more visually pleasing competition area, but also more functional with flags and things, weather permitting.
Yeah, I think you're 100% on there, Ron. I think a good way to kind of explain is I think we want the course to have a more vertical presence. One thing we saw in the evaluations from last year is it was hard to potentially distinguish the finish line just from the lines that we drew. But again, like Ron said, that was all really due to the high winds and weather. We did try to put out cones and stuff in the morning before most folks got there. But by, the time you guys got there, they were all blown off the course anyway. So again, this year, hopefully we won't have the same wind and we can make the course have more of a vertical presence.
Good. Okay, next slide. In terms of relays exchange, and this is something you should practice. You won't have a good practice area similar to the actual relays that we have down on the oval, but we should practice in exchange zones, passing the baton from athlete 1 to athlete 2, making sure that the exchange is in the exchange zone. And again, remind your athletes that if the incoming athlete drops the baton, that's the athlete that needs to pick it up. Anything other than that, if one athlete drops it and the other athlete picks it up, that's an invalid exchange, and that would result in a DQ. Again, similar to, I'm gonna go back a little bit, to the bottom part, Zach. We do this at the track as well. For the exchange zones, we will, our officials, our course marshals will position your athletes in the middle of the exchange zone. We will identify where the beginning of the exchange zone is and the end of the exchange zone. And we'll place them in the beginning, place him or her in the middle of the exchange zone. If you want to coach your athletes something different than that, to have one athlete run a little bit longer and have the next partner or the next athlete at the front of the exchange zone. That's up to you. We'll place them in the middle, and then they're free to move wherever they want in the exchange zone. Okay. For competitors in your relay, for our unified team, you can run your 4 competitors in any order that you like. There is no, if somehow you lose a competitor, either a partner or an athlete, and you only have 3, you cannot run that relay. We cannot have, there's not to be any instance of one athlete or partner running 2 legs of a relay. Okay. Slightly different than the track. Only the head coach from a delegation may file a protest. And you would give that to either Zach or myself down in the control area. We will rule on it. That protest needs to be filed within, I think it's 30 minutes from the time the results are posted. There's usually no issue with getting those out there for you to see. We'll rule on those right away. If for some reason you need to escalate that, that can be done to the sports committee. Is that right, Zach? And that would be on the same protest form.
Perfect.
Again, under miscellaneous, and we have an issue generally at time trials, not too often at the competition, where coaches, spectators, families are pacing their athlete. Everybody's excited. It's a straightaway, and we want to see our athletes get across the finish line. But we will caution you at time trials. We will DQ your athlete on the course if they are being paced by a family member or volunteer, and we will caution our volunteers as well. So just be aware of that you cannot pace your athlete. No different here than at the track. Okay. Here are the list. I'm not going to read through these. The list of the things that our course marshals and not our course marshals, our course officials will be looking for disqualifications. You can read those, at your leisure. That these have not changed over the 6 or 7 years that I've been doing this, and probably the 40 or 50 years we've been doing snowshoe prior to that. Okay.
All right, Ron, I'll pick up here, give you a break. Thanks for taking on the rules and a lot of the competition stuff. Again, we talked about On Snow. Here's the confirmation on those dates: Saturday, January 11th, and then Saturday, February 8th, we will be up at Whitetail for On Snow training at the operations building there. You will all see a Survey Monkey or maybe a form that we go to. We haven't decided yet which route we're going to go, but you will be getting information within the next week how to register and get all of your athletes lined up for that. The important thing with that also comes for meal ticket count, and not for you as much as Alpine. They also need lift tickets. So that will go out to your program leads, who will disseminate that information down to you for the final team roster. Again, that will be coming out via an email from Ryan and myself probably within the next week. Again, registration link in the snowshoe guide and follow up from the email tonight. You'll also be getting that information on the coach's resource page as well. So if you misplace it in an email or something, or for some reason it doesn't make it to you, you can always check the coach's resource page. That information will be up there as well, and you can touch base with your area program leadership with that information as well. Again, the registration process, it's very important to work with your area leadership, and if you have a sports coordinator, to get your athletes registered. The first important deadline is that training registration deadline. That's for getting all athletes, unified partners, volunteers, coaches need to be within training within GMS for 2020. If they're not in that, they're not qualified to move on to competition and get registered via the competition registration date of February 6th. Again, that then establishes participants that will be attending winter games and time trials. And the competition registration deadline is the one where their events have to be designated. Training, again, it's just getting everybody in there and attached to snowshoeing training, but competition registration is for the events that your athlete is planning to run at time trials and then at championships. Some additional registration stuff. Again, everybody must participate at time trials on Sunday in order to compete at Winter Games on Monday and Tuesday. You may, even if you submit an event in GMS, if you get to time trials and you realize, hey, I put my athlete in something that's either a little too long for them or a little too short for them, if you let us know by the time we close up shop for time trials on Sunday, we can make that adjustment. If you make that decision, Sunday night going into Monday, that's too late. We've already rescheduled, redivisioned, and set up everything going into Monday and Tuesday. Again, the paperwork stuff, just to hit base on that quick. Again, athletes and partners. Athletes must have an up-to-date medical. Partners need their background and protective behaviors completed. And then your sport volunteers on top of the background and protective behaviors need concussion. Assistant coaches on top of those three things needs CSOA. And then the head coach on top of those four things needs that sport-specific course, which again can be the on-snows if you come to either one of those. Again, just a reminder of our resources going into the season. Our coaches resource page through our SOMD website under the coaches tab, that'll have the rules, that'll have the coaches guide that you can access. It'll have the dates for on-snow training, the registration stuff for on-snow training. It'll have any resource that we possibly have that we can share with you on there as well. Another good thing for the coaches resource page going into Winter Games weekend, coming out of time trials on that weekend and such, we will post the heats and the results on there as we go through the weekend. So if you are curious to see, especially if you want to pre-prep, we did a pretty good job last year, I think, of getting the heats up after time trials for day one. So coaches were comfortable and had a heads up of who needed to be there right away in the morning and how to plan out their day. Additionally, a recording of this webinar will be on YouTube. And we are working on training videos from snowshoeing. Ron and I have had conversations with U.S. Snowshoe Association and a few other folks about some resources for snowshoe training. We are working on that, so hopefully we will get those up. And then you can always go to SpecialOlympics.org. They have all their sports organized by sports, which have all the same things that our coach resource page have, but that's always another option as well. Again, just a reminder of your key dates throughout the season. Your on-snow trainings are January 11th and February 8th. And then the competition, our pre-competition webinar is the 13th of February. Time trials is on the 23rd at the Ops building. And then championships for Winter Games is at the Snow Tubing Park on the 24th and 25th. This is where we will take questions. If you have questions, again, remember that if you go into participants, you can raise your hand in there. We can open your line, or you could go into the group chat under the More portion of the toolbar and type in a question. If you have a question for Alpine, or another coach comes to you asking about Alpine questions, Ryan Kelchner is the person to go to for Alpine. Melissa Anger will be on site. She runs our control center that weekend. But so for Winter Games, myself or Ryan are the contacts that you should go to. I'm looking for questions, not seeing any so far. Ron, do you have anything to add while people are potentially coming up with questions?
No, I would really curious if we have some interest in the coaches race. Yeah, I wonder what kind of incentives our coaches might entice them, be it a box of ho-hos or a hug from Zach or I for the winter. I know we did this a number of years ago at WISP. There was a coaches race, and the athletes really enjoyed seeing their coaches run the race. So think about it. If we can get 4 or 5 coaches doing a 100-meter race, maybe we can get a couple of staff members to fill out a couple of lanes as well and have some fun with it.
Yeah, again, I think that could be
Those
really
staff
cool.
members
Really,
would not be me, of course, but Zach maybe.
Brian says maybe only the 50 instead of 100. And John Follett says he will run as one of the he'll run for one of the volunteer hats. Well, maybe we'll get prizes for everybody. I can figure out prizes. That's not hard. We'll do something fun, and we won't threaten you with a hug from Ron or myself. That's a little bit more of a threat than a prize.
Yeah, disincentive.
Other than that, any questions? I'm glad Brian and John found the comment section. That lets me know that things are working for GoToWebinar or Zoom, not GoToWebinar. See, I'm even in that mode still. Okay, you still have a few minutes still. There's just a few last housekeeping things. Again, registration forms, procedures. We're going to burn through this because you guys know this stuff. And if you coach other sports, you've seen this at least 4 times this year probably. Again, the big reminder is no athlete or volunteer may participate in any manner in any sort of programming, practice, preseason, whatever, outside of a preseason meeting without a current valid medical or volunteer form. Again, that's a safety thing and a liability thing. We just want to make sure that everybody is up to date with that stuff. And I drew on the screen by mistake. I'm going to erase that. There we go. All right. Now we're moving forward. Again, work with your area leadership to have all of the paperwork and stuff that you need in. They are very good at the system, and they know and they can help you out. Again, athletes must have a valid medical to be considered valid. It must have all the pages filled out, all 3 pages, any necessary information for including diagnosis and medical. Again, you guys know all of this, what a completed medical form is. This is what it looks like. If for some reason you have never seen the medical form, those are the 3 pages. And the 4th for the medical referral. And then the athlete participant waiver form. Again, that needs to be attached with the medical. Volunteers, again, we've gone over a couple times what the different levels of volunteers need. If you do have any questions, we have that up on our coaches resource page as well. The handy progression diagram that Janet made for us is up there if you need to double check. The volunteer application, again, page 1, page 2. And then if you have a volunteer that is a minor, they need to do the student minor reference form. Again, we cannot run a background check on anybody that is under 18. They will do this and have that filled out, which also runs 3 years like the background check until they are 18. Incident reports. Please have incident reports with you at practice. They're always good to have just so we can keep track if anybody gets injured in any way. Even if it's a bruised knee or something, it's always good to do an incident report so your area director and area leadership know that something happened and occurred. And again, it's also for the purposes of insurance. If something happens that somebody needs medical attention and the insurance kicks in, all that stuff gets worked out through having a first report of accident or incident. This is what it looks like if you haven't seen it. It's a pretty straightforward form there. And then my thank you slide that got all bunched up here. I will ask again for another round of questions if anybody has any. But until then, I want to thank you guys again for all the work that you do, all the work that you will be doing in the cold out there, getting your athletes ready for winter games. And, even throughout the year, as we're coming to the end of the year, you guys have done a lot of other sports, and I appreciate that you guys have put in a lot of effort to multiple sports throughout the year, trying to give the best opportunity for our athletes to experience, the enjoyment of competition in sport. And again, if you have any questions, concerns, anything going into snowshoeing, if you need some tips or tricks or whatever, feel free to reach out to myself or Ron. We can both help you out. And if there's anything else that we can do, please feel free to let us know. Otherwise, everybody have a great night, and we will see you all very soon.